I'm often contacted by other wood oven enthusiasts who want to know what kinds of pans I like to use in the oven. So in this episode, I'm going to go over some of my favorites and what I like to cook in them. Most of the cooking I do in the wood oven is high heat cooking, so with a live fire. So I like to have pans that can withstand the kind of heat that will get up to 800 degrees Fahrenheit or 425 centigrade. But at the same time, all these pans, and then some that I wouldn't use with a live fire, are great for retained heat cooking too. So let's get started. I use my carbon steel pans in the wood oven more than I do any other material. And these particular ones are made by the very talented people over at Blanc Creatives. There are some similarities between carbon steel and cast iron in that they can both withstand the very high heat of the wood oven, and they both require some kind of seasoning if you really want to get the best out of them. Ironically, despite the name, carbon steel pans have less carbon in them than cast iron, but this actually makes them stronger and, more importantly, much lighter, which I think makes them easier to handle and move around the oven. This particular pan is the 13-inch Saucier, and it weighs around 2.8 kilograms. The equivalent size Lodge skillet weighs around 4.7 kilograms, so that's almost 70% heavier. Carbon steel pans arrive with a raw surface that needs to be washed and then seasoned if you want it to develop this natural non-stick surface. I recommend you watch the Blanc Creatives YouTube video and they'll take you through those steps. And then with use and time, micro layers of seasoning will continue to build up, making the surface more durable. This is the 13-inch roaster, and it has a lower profile. And I find this is useful when I want to take advantage of direct heat from the fire. And the smaller 9-inch pan I find is ideal for making side dishes. And this is the 13-inch Saucier, and it has a higher profile. So I find this more useful if I don't want too much direct heat and I have a longer cooking time. The other thing I love about these pans are the loop handles. This means they take up less space inside the oven. I can cook multiple dishes at the same time, and I can rotate them easily when I want the food to cook evenly. And the beautiful craftsmanship of these pans means I can bring the food directly from the oven and present it at the table. So I find carbon steel the perfect all-round pan for the wood oven. They heat up very quickly, they retain that heat really well, and are perfect whether you're cooking with a live fire or you want to take advantage of some retained heat cooking. And on a side note, with all the heat from the wood-fired oven, I think it's very important to stay hydrated. And Blanc Creatives also happens to make a very nice line of barware. Right, what's next? Cast iron pans are a very popular choice for using in the wood-fired oven. Personally, I don't use them that often. The kind of cooking that I like to do, I'm more likely to choose my carbon steel pans. The main disadvantage is their weight, which I find makes them less agile for use in the oven. This is my 12-inch Lodge skillet. Lodge are definitely at the less expensive range, but there's an extensive choice of other manufacturers at different price points. Because most cast iron pans have a rougher surface to them, I don't think they season quite as well as carbon steel. But with use and time, they will develop a pretty nice non-stick surface to them. There are some more expensive cast iron pans that do have a smoother surface to them and can be lighter in weight. Even though I don't use my cast iron pan that often, I do think it's pretty hard to beat for making a steak. You can get this up to a searingly high temperature. The flat surface of the pan means the entire surface of the steak gets this wonderful caramelized sear. And it develops that wonderful crust you expect of a great steak. I've also used the skillet for baking focaccia. The pan develops a nice even heat for making that bread, and the sides prevent too much direct heat from burning the edges. Then I also have this great little 1-quart cast iron sauce pot made by Finex. This is great for doing sauce reductions. And I've also used it for making some garlic confit using the oven's retained heat. Finex pans come with these spring handles that stay cool when you're cooking on a stovetop, but in the wood oven they'll absorb the heat and still need to be handled with gloves. I just have this one Finex, but they make a full range of cast iron pans. They're much more expensive than Lodge, but I think the design, quality and craftsmanship make them worth it. I also have some of these smaller cast iron gratin dishes made by Staub. I'll use these versatile little pans for making smaller portions of food. One other thing about pans you've spent time developing a seasoning on. Any acidic foods or liquids that you put in them will eat away at the patina that's developed on the surface. And if you leave an empty pan in the oven for too long, the high heat will eventually burn off the seasoning and you'll have to start all over again. It might not be particularly special to look at, but stainless steel remains a great option to use in the wood-fired oven. This heavy-duty pan is made by All-Clad. It's quite light, but very tough and can take a lot of punishment. It's temperature rated to 600 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 315 centigrade, so it's certainly made to handle the heat of the oven. The long handle does help move the pan in and out of the oven. But the main reason I don't use these as much as I do my carbon steel is the handle kind of restricts them from being rotated once they're in the oven. So I mainly use these for sauteing vegetables and other side dishes where I can toss the food to make sure it cooks evenly. They're also great if you're planning on making a pan sauce because they'll develop a nice buildup of fond. In addition to the skillet, I also have this stainless steel roasting pan, also made by All-Clad. The high sides means I don't get too much direct heat from the fire, and that's great when I have a longer cooking time. But it's also good for developing pan juices when you want to make a nice gravy to go with your dish. It's tough enough that it won't warp in the high heat, and the upright handles makes it very easy to move around the oven. I also have some stainless steel gratin dishes. These are made by Morviel. These are actually temperature rated to 680 Fahrenheit, that's 360 centigrade. And I'll use these for braising, making side dishes, but also for presenting food at the table. So in general, I think stainless steel are a great choice to have in your wood oven pan collection. It really doesn't matter what you cook in them, even if it's acidic, it won't affect the surface. They don't need to be seasoned, and they clean up really easily. The Cazuela is an exceptionally sturdy clay cookware. It's made using a traditional refractory clay method, supposedly going back to Roman times. That produces a very robust and dense clay that makes this very strong and perfect for cooking in the wood-fired oven. They have a food-safe glaze on the inside. And then before using them, they have an unusual seasoning method which requires you to soak them in water for at least 12 hours and then rub the back with a garlic clove. If you follow the seasoning instructions, these dishes will last you for a long time. I also think they're a very attractive cookware, which is perfect when you want to take the food directly from the oven to the table. I've used this cookware for making steamed clams, shakshuka, and one of my favorite dishes, gambas. You should handle these a little bit more gently than you would metal pans, but I've had these since I built my oven, so they've lasted me a long time. Copper pans are easy to divide into the advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are copper is the best heat conductor, more so than any other material I've mentioned. It distributes heat very evenly and they look really beautiful. The disadvantages are copper is very expensive and I think you're better off spending your money on good carbon steel, and they take a lot of care if you want them to remain presentable. By itself, copper is a reactive material, which means it will impart a metallic taste to your food. So you need to use pans that are lined with a non-reactive material like stainless steel. You can buy copper pans with a tin lining, but tin has a melting point of around 450 Fahrenheit, that's 232 centigrade. So I wouldn't recommend you use those in the high heat of the wood oven. If you're interested in some beautiful copper cookware, then I've listed several manufacturers below. But I tend to use mine more for presenting food at the table than I do for cooking. I love using my Tuscan Grill. This model is by Stephen Reichlen. He's an author of several books focused on cooking with fire. It's 14 inches square and made of cast iron. And when it first arrived, it had 4-inch legs, but I found them to be a little bit too high and didn't always give me easy access to the food in the oven. So I cut them down to 2 inches. You can get this to a very high temperature. It's easy to move around and it doesn't really need to be seasoned. So you can leave it in the oven for as long as you want. I use this to grill many different things, including steak and fish. And it produces really nice grill marks if that's what you're looking for. I think the Tuscan Grill is a really versatile piece of kit to have for your oven. The cast iron casserole is another great choice for the wood oven. They're well suited for slow cooking, especially when you're using retained heat. They evenly distribute heat, and the lid traps in moisture, keeping everything inside moist and tender. You can purchase these either with or without an enamel coating. And other than the shape, the uncoated casserole is no different from the cast iron skillet and needs to be seasoned and cared for the same way. Enamel coated are easy to clean and maintain, but I think they're best suited for retained heat cooking. Most enamel coated casseroles, like the ones made by Staub and Le Creuset, are temperature rated to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 260 centigrade. So I would be cautious if you're going to use these with a live fire and place them in a part of the oven where the temperature matches their specifications. I think cast iron casseroles are a great addition to your wood oven pan collection. And when it comes to retained heat, you can have a lot of fun cooking in these pans. So those are some of the pans that I enjoy using in the wood-fired oven. But it's really a matter of personal preference. You should use whatever feels comfortable and matches your cooking style. But I do think it's important to have an understanding of the material you're using. Not all pans are manufactured to withstand the high heat of the oven. So a better understanding of how they perform will help you get the most out of them. I look forward to hearing about what pans you enjoy using in the wood-fired oven. Thanks for watching.